Think back to when you started riding. What did you learn first? Maybe this was actually pretty recent for you, if you started riding or you came back into riding as an adult. Or you can think all the way back to when you were a kid. Those first experiences. It may have been in a riding lesson with an instructor telling you what to do, giving you exercises, or it might have just been on a friend's horse or on a pony that your grandparents had. But think of what were these first experiences like? What did you do? What did you learn first, and then what did you learn next? I think for many of us, we first learned riding by just being on the horse. So we were put on the horse and we just started to ride. And then through a process, it may have seemed progressive, it may have seemed just kind of random, picking things up here and there. You started to learn a little more about not just the riding and what your body was supposed to do and how to stay on, but you also started to learn more about the horse, who the horse was, why they did certain things, how to take care of horses, and eventually you got to the point that you are now, whether you're a very experienced person or if you feel like you're still really much in that initial learning phase. In today's video, I want to talk about the progression of learning and how we're very adaptable at learning in all kinds of different ways, and how often learning riding is so scattered. But when we follow a more progressive path, when we learn the fundamentals and when we see the different parts that come into our riding, we can actually learn and we can make progress much faster and much more efficiently to the benefit of us, and probably more importantly, to the benefit of our horses. I encourage my students to think of riding in a holistic way. There's the physical skills of riding. There's balancing in the saddle. There's learning how to give certain aids. There's learning how to have the independent aids that you can lift your inside rein as you take your outside leg back, for example. But there's also so many other elements to being a great rider, to being a great horse person. Because riding is not just a physical challenge, but it's a mental challenge, and it's also a relational challenge. So the mental challenge comes into, there's a real risk in riding. When we climb on the back of a horse, we could fall off, we could be thrown off. Even the most reliable horses can do things that are unexpected. So we are taking a real risk, and there's an element of fear that can come in with that. There's an element of assessing, of making choices about, how far and fast are we going to push ourselves? Are we going to test our skills? How much risk do we want to take? What kind of horse, do we want to ride that spirited horse or that young horse, or do we want to stay with the older, safer horses? So there's this mental challenge of, I'm taking on this risk and I'm doing something that is challenging. I'm learning. There's the potential frustration that can come in with any learning of a new skill. And especially as we are learning a movement skill like riding as adults, there's that added level of challenge of sometimes, bringing our body back into new movements and redeveloping those patterns in the brain for learning movement. It just doesn't come quite as quickly or as easily as you may have remembered it coming when you were a kid. So we have the physical challenges, we have those mental challenges that can come with the risk, with the fear, and with the frustration. And then we also have the relational challenges of riding. And to me, I think of this as actually one of the pieces of riding that makes it such a rich experience, because we're not just riding furry motorbikes. The horse is a thinking, feeling, experiencing being. And when we're working with them, when we're riding, so much of our riding is communicating with the horse. It's making requests, it's asking them to do something, to go faster, to go slower, to change directions. It's asking them even just to connect with us, to pay attention. Good communication really is good training, and this is why every rider needs to understand those elements of how do we learn, how do we communicate, and how do our horses learn. So with riding as a physical, as a mental, and as a relational challenge, we want to be able to progress in each of these areas by combining theory and practice, by combining knowledge and skill, by finding a balance in each of these areas. For example, in our riding, you may have been told to ride with your body in that line of shoulder to hip to heel. But if you don't really know why this is, it can be kind of just empty advice. And what does it actually feel like when you're in that position? How do you even know if you're there or not? But when we have the knowledge of this is how the body works, we sit in this line because it aligns the major joints of our body. And when those major joints are in line, they have more range of motion. We can ride with less tension. That allows us to better follow the movement of the horse. Now we have the knowledge of why we're doing it. And then we can go out, we can do an exercise that helps us practice that gives us a felt sense, a physical feedback of, okay, this is what it feels like when I have that line. Now I know the feeling that I'm looking for. This is a progression of skill. So we can think about that in our physical skills of riding. We can think about that in the mental skills of how big of a challenge do I set for myself? How hard do I push before I take a step down and I do something at a little easier level? And we can also think about this progression in the relational skills. This helps us understand our horses, what drives their behavior, what creates their personality, what can cause their bad behavior, and how we can communicate with them in a way that doesn't just get them to do what we want them to do, but that actually creates a relationship and is a communication in a way that the horse can enjoy too. Think back to that first question that I asked, that how do you remember starting riding? You know, what did you learn first? What did you learn next? Even think about how you're learning right now. Is there a progression to it? Do you understand what you're doing and why? And do you see how you're building your skill, not just in get on the horse and trot around, but also in the mental component of that and of the relational component, the understanding your horse, the connecting with them, the piece that makes riding so special and so different from any other sport or activity that you could be out doing. As an instructor, this clear progression of learning is something that was always really important for me to bring my students. And this is actually what started me in creating videos and creating courses and creating what is now Horse Class. Is I would create these videos for my students to go beyond just their riding lesson, to bring in these other elements of this is why I'm asking you to do these exercises. And this is more information about your horse so that it's not just come on and jump on and figure out how to stay on, but that it's actually this partnership. And the more that you can know about your horse and the more that you can experience some time with your horse outside of riding, the better the riding experience can be. So now with Horse Class, with over 85,000 students around the world, it's so exciting to see this early vision get stronger. And I continue to work at how can I create this progression of learning for our online students. So I would love to invite you to join me in a free workshop that we have starting on October 11th. This is a workshop from my balanced riding course that was the very first online riding course that I created, and I've completely redesigned the curriculum to better bring in this progression, to better bring in all the different elements that help us to be great riders and just great horse people. There's a link down below to sign up for free for this online workshop with video clinics, live Q&As, worksheets, customizable exercises. I would love to have you join us in this free workshop. But right now, I'd also love to hear from you. What is one thing that you wish you would have learned earlier? What is that one thing that you know now that could have made your riding journey so much easier if you'd learned it earlier? Put that in the comments down below, and I hope to see you soon in our balanced riding course workshop.